Hello, Fifth Block friends. I hope everyone's doing well with our current closure. I know these are interesting and challenging times, but I'm confident that we'll be able to get through this together as a class, as a school, as a community, and certainly as a country. So hang in there. And I'd like to introduce to you today's lesson. It will be our first remote learning activity. We're going to continue to explore the Odyssey by Homer. And today we are going to look at the actual poetic text from the poem as it was translated by Fitzgerald in our anchor text. So a couple things we have to do in order to get started. Number one, we have to click on our remote learning activities module, which is a module that I have just created. So if we go to our Canvas homepage and click on remote learning activities, you'll see that it's going to bring up a new module called remote learning activities. And then inside of that is assignment 37 in the Cave of the Cyclops comprehension and analysis worksheet. So if you double click that, you'll see that it comes up. And I'm going to put it in preview mode for me. And there's our assignment 37 in the Cave of the Cyclops, Comprehension and Analysis Worksheet. There's an image I've embedded, and it's a recognizable image for you all. Here's the Cyclops, and he's entering his cave. He's got his sheep with him. And there are Odysseus's crew. Odysseus is, of course, among them. And that image kind of sets the scene for the poetic excerpt that we will read today. There are 5 questions. The questions are below. And we'll get to those questions once we engage with the text. So the text is available on the blue, highlighted, and underlined link, where it says 3 excerpts from Book 9 of the Odyssey. If you click on that, you'll see that it comes up, and the text itself is divided into section 1, then section 2, and then finally section 3 starts at page 9. And we're only going to listen to the highlighted portion of the text. So let's start right here, section 1, where it says, "Our party quickly made its way to his cave." That's where we're going to begin. And that's Odysseus narrating in the first person. And he's describing these events as they happened as a narrative inside of the Cyclops' cave on the Cyclops' island. And remember, the name of the Cyclops is Polyphemus, and we'll find out later that Polyphemus will admit to being Poseidon's son. So it's one thing to consider before we begin. This is an advanced text, it's ancient, and there's a lot in it that, in listening to it, you might not necessarily understand. I certainly think you'll understand the narrative, and I often have trouble understanding this text without close reading it. So if you have to just let it wash over you and experience what you experience and follow the things you don't follow, that'll be just fine, and don't get down on yourself if not every word is clear. But I certainly think that if you listen and read as we go, the text will be very clear to you, and you'll be able to answer these questions and understand the text fully. So in a few moments, I'm going to actually start the narration. You'll hear it through your computers or through your earbuds, however you're listening. And I'm just going to pull up Audible, and I'm going to go to Odysseus and crew go into the cave, and it should start momentarily.
Our party quickly made its way to his cave, but we failed to find our host himself inside. He was off in his pasture, ranging his sleek flocks. So we explored his den, gazing wide-eyed at it all. The large flat racks loaded with drying cheeses, the folds crowded with young lambs and kids, split into 3 groups. Here the spring-born, here mid-yearlings, here the fresh sucklings off to the side. Each sort was penned apart. And all his vessels, pails and hammered buckets he used for milking, were brimming full with whey. From the start, my comrades pressed me, pleading hard, "Let's make away with the cheeses, then come back. Hurry, drive the lambs and kids from the pens to our swift ship. Put out to sea at once." But I would not give way. And how much better it would have been. Not till I saw him, saw what gifts he'd give. But he proved no lovely sight to my companions. There we built a fire, set our hands on the cheeses, offered some to the gods, and ate the bulk ourselves, and settled down inside, awaiting his return. And back he came from pasture, late in the day, herding his flocks home and lugging a huge load of good dry logs to fuel his fire at supper. He flung them down in the cave, a jolting crash. We scuttled in panic into the deepest dark recess. And next he drove his sleek flocks into the open vault, all he'd milk at least, but he left the males outside, rams and billy goats out in the high-walled yard. Then to close his door he hoisted overhead a tremendous massive slab. No 22 wagons, rugged and four-wheeled, could budge that boulder off the ground, I tell you. Such an immense stone the monster wedged to block his cave. Then down he squatted to milk his sheep and bleating goats, each in order, and put a suckling underneath each dam. And half of the fresh white milk he curdled quickly, set it aside in wicker racks to press for cheese. The other half let stand in pails and buckets, ready at hand to wash his supper down. As soon as he'd briskly finished all his chores, he lit his fire and spied us in the blaze. And strangers, he thundered out, "Now who are you? Where did you sail from over the running sea lanes, out on a trading spree or roving the waves like pirates, sea-wolves raiding at will who risk their lives to plunder other men?" The hearts inside us shook, terrified by his rumbling voice and monstrous hulk. Nevertheless, I found the nerve to answer firmly, "Men of Achaea we are, and bound now from Troy, driven far off course by the warring winds over the vast gulf of the sea, battling home on a strange tack, a route that's off the map, and so we've come to you. So it must please King Zeus's plotting heart. We're glad to say we're men of Atrides Agamemnon, whose fame is the proudest thing on earth these days. So great a city he sacked, such multitudes he killed. But since we've chanced on you, we're at your knees in hopes of a warm welcome, even a guest gift, the sort that hosts give strangers. That's the custom. Respect the gods, my friend, we're suppliants at your mercy. Zeus of the strangers guards all guests and suppliants. Strangers are sacred. Zeus will avenge their rights." "Stranger," he grumbled back.
And that brings us to the end of section 1. And at this point, we can go back to our learning activity and take a look at the first 2 questions. Question 1 highlights a section of the text in the beginning where it talks about a metaphor. And that metaphor is Odysseus saying that his men built a fire and set their hands on the cheeses. A metaphor is a figurative statement where the meaning represents more than its literal meaning. So I've highlighted the part of that sentence that is metaphoric, and I would like you to explain that metaphor's meaning. What does set our hands on the cheeses mean in this text as a metaphor? And then if you go down to the second question, it's towards the end of section 1, where Odysseus is explaining that they have come seeking hospitality. But you could argue that Polyphemus has a right to be angry at Odysseus and his men, that they've trespassed on his home. In ancient Greek culture, hospitality was offered to everyone, no matter who they were. We've discussed it. So what does this conflict in the text, and it's pictured above, tell you about the tradition of hospitality in ancient Greek culture? What should a guest expect, and what is expected of a host? And why did the ancient Greeks put such a value on hospitality? You can answer that question in that space. And then we're going to move on to the second section where the question for section 3 is located. I'll restart the text. Give me a moment, please.
Nightfall brought him back, herding his woolly sheep, and he quickly drove the sleek flock into the vaulted cavern, rams and all. None left outside in the walled yard. His own idea, perhaps? Or a god led him on. Then he hoisted the huge slab to block the door, and squatted to milk his sheep and bleating goats, each in order, putting a suckling underneath each dam. And as soon as he'd briskly finished all his chores, he snatched up 2 more men and fixed his meal. But this time I lifted a carved wooden bowl brimful of my ruddy wine and went right up to the Cyclops, enticing, "Here, Cyclops, try this wine," to top off the banquet of human flesh you bolted down. Judge for yourself what stock our ship had stored. I brought it here to make you a fine libation, hoping you would pity me, Cyclops, send me home. But your rages are insufferable, you barbarian. How can any man on earth come visit you after this? What you've done outrages all that's right. At that he seized the bowl and tossed it off, and the heady wine pleased him immensely. "More!" he demanded a second bowl. "A hearty helping, and tell me your name now quickly, so I can hand my guest a gift to warm his heart. Our soil yields the Cyclops powerful, full-bodied wine, and the rains from Zeus build its strength, but this is nectar, ambrosia. This flows from heaven." So he declared. I poured him another fiery bowl. 3 bowls I brimmed, and 3 he drank to the last drop, the fool. And then, when the wine was swirling round his brain, I approached my host with a cordial, winning word. "So you ask me the name I'm known by, Cyclops. I will tell you. But you must give me a guest gift, as you promised. Nobody. That's my name. Nobody. So my mother and father call me, all my friends." But he boomed back at me from his ruthless heart. "Nobody. I'll eat nobody last of all his friends. I'll eat the others first. That's my gift to you." With that, he toppled over, sprawled full length, flat on his back, and lay there, his massive neck slumping to one side, and sleep that conquers all overwhelmed him now, as wine came spurting, flooding up from his gullet with chunks of human flesh. He vomited, blind drunk. Now, at last, I thrust our steak in a bed of embers to get it red hot, and rallied all my comrades. Courage, no panic, no one hang back now. And green as it was, just as the olive steak was about to catch fire, the glow terrific, yes, I dragged it from the flames, my men clustering round as some god breathed enormous courage through us all. Hoisting high that olive steak with its stabbing point, straight into the monster's eye they rammed it hard. I drove my weight on it from above and bored it home, as a shipwright bores his beam with a shipwright's drill, that men below, whipping the strap back and forth, whirl, and the drill keeps twisting faster, never stopping. So we seized our stake with its fiery tip and bored it round and round in the giant's eye, till blood came boiling up around that smoking shaft, and the hot blast singed his brow and eyelids round the core, and the broiling eyeball burst. Its crackling roots blazed and hissed, as a blacksmith plunges a glowing axe or adze in an ice-cold bath, and the metal screeches steam and its temper hardens. That's the iron's strength. So the eye of the Cyclops sizzled round that stake. He loosed a hideous roar. The rock walls echoed round, and we scuttled back in terror. The monster wrenched the spike from his eye, and out it came with a red geyser of blood. He flung it aside with frantic hands, and mad with pain, he bellowed out for help from his neighbor Cyclops, living around about in caves on wind-swept crags. Hearing his cries, they lumbered up from every side, and hulking round his cavern, asked what ailed him. "What, Polyphemus? What in the world's the trouble? Roaring out in the god-sent night to rob us of our sleep. Surely no one's rustling your flocks against your will. Surely no one's trying to kill you now by fraud or force. Nobody. Friends, Polyphemus bellowed back from his cave. Nobody's killing me now by fraud, and not by force. If you're alone, his friends boomed back at once, and nobody's trying to overpower you now. Look, it must be a plague sent here by mighty Zeus, and there's no escape from that. You'd better pray to your father, Lord Poseidon.
And that'll bring us to the end of the part of section 2 that we're going to review, and we'll go back to our assessment. And I'd like you to look at question 3 that begins with a personification, and that's a literary device in which non-human things are given human qualities. That personification in the text sounds like "When young dawn with her rosy red fingers shone once more." I want you to explain what that personification means. Who is the young dawn? And why does she have rosy red fingers? It's not literal, it's figurative. So review the text and explain that personification. What does that mean? What is Homer in this text speaking of when he mentions young dawn with her rosy red fingers? Question 4. This is the nobody trick that we've discussed. We've listened to it and we've seen it in a couple different formats. Now I'd like you to explain how the nobody trick that Odysseus plays on the Cyclops is similar to the Trojan horse plan from the battle at Troy and Odysseus's triumph, where he fooled the Trojans and allowed the Greeks to enter and sack the city. Again, this is an example of Odysseus's intelligence and his cleverness. And I'd like you to connect the nobody trick with the Trojan horse plan. Why are they the same? And maybe why they're different. Explain that in complete sentences in the text box provided. We're going to go back to our text for our final section, section 3. And if you can either follow along on the screen or look at your own text. Section 3 begins with Odysseus and his crew having escaped, blinded the Cyclops with the nobody trick, then re-embarking on their ships and leaving. And we're ready to begin.
They swung aboard. They sat to the oars in ranks, and in rhythm churned the water white with stroke on stroke. But once offshore, as far as a man's shout can carry, I called back to the Cyclops, stinging taunts. So, Cyclops, no weak coward it was whose crew you bent to devour there in your vaulted cave, you with your brute force. Your filthy crimes came down on your own head, you shameless cannibal, daring to eat your guests in your own house. So Zeus and the other gods have paid you back. That made the rage of the monster boil over. Ripping off the peak of a towering crag, he heaved it so hard the boulder landed just in front of our dark prow, and a huge swell reared up as the rock went plunging under a tidal wave from the open sea. The sudden backwash drove us landward again, forcing us close inshore, but grabbing a long pole, I thrust us off and away, tossing my head for dear life, signaling crews to put their backs in the oars, escape grim death. They threw themselves in the labour, rowed on fast, but once we'd ploughed the breakers twice as far, again I began to taunt the Cyclops. Men around me trying to check me, calm me left and right. So headstrong, why rile the beast again? That rock he flung in the sea just now, hurling our ship to shore once more, we thought we'd die on the spot. If he caught a sound from one of us, just a whisper, he would have crushed our heads and ship timbers with one heave of another flashing jagged rock. Good God, the brute can throw, so they begged. But they could not bring my fighting spirit round. I called back with another burst of anger. Cyclops, if any man on the face of the earth should ask you, who blinded you, shamed you so, say Odysseus, raider of cities, he gouged out your eye, Laertes' son, who makes his home in Ithaca.
And that brings us to the end of section 3, with Odysseus, quite foolishly, it would seem, taunting the Cyclops and revealing his identity, even after he had spent so much time and energy and intelligence to conceal it with the nobody trick. So here's your final question, question 5. Why would Odysseus reveal his real identity to Polyphemus after blinding and escaping from him? Why would he do such a thing? Did he have a plan? Was he being overly proud? What does it tell us about Odysseus' character that he would taunt the Cyclops and reveal his name that he worked so hard to conceal? If you answer those 5 questions fully in complete sentences, I will give you 15 points that will go on your fourth marking period grade. I know Rose has already finished this, and she did a great job. The rest of you can finish this during the week, and I hope you enjoy answering this assessment, and I hope you enjoy listening to our text today. And once you get it done, feel free to turn it in, and I'll grade it immediately. All right, I will be back in touch with you guys very soon. Be well. Goodbye.